My name is Ed Weinberger. In case you can't tell the difference, this is
It's a pseudonym.
Mr. Asner. I cannot see anybody or anything. Maybe that's, is it supposed to be better that way? Do you want to say anything to anybody?
Well, I feel terribly warmed by this audience, and was that a?
No.
That was.
We haven't done anything yet.
Oh, okay. I feel terribly warmed, and I'm delighted that just scribbling a few pages like we have can bring you out on a rainy night. That's unbelievable. For there to be rain in New York City, that's amazing. It really is. And I'm delighted you're here. And undoubtedly, Ed is delighted, although he has difficulty showing it.
And don't intend to, by the way. But let me announce that I'm also the moderator, which is really strange.
He's not very moderate, but...
Because do you remember the movie Bananas with Woody Allen? He had to play an attorney who was cross-examining himself as a hostile witness. It's a little like being a moderator and a guest at the same time. Obviously, I was not the first choice.
Nor was I.
And I I know for a fact that they had called many other people to moderate this.
Is Donald Trump available?
Let me don't interrupt.
What?
Let me do my bit.
Oh, okay. Is that what it's called, a bit?
Yes, I'm about to do.
Hey.
There were other moderators called. I have the list, in fact, that they tried. I remember some of them, and I will tell them to you now. Al Roker was invited, but he couldn't make it. He had to take his wife to the airport. Charlie Rose couldn't make it. He had to stay home and watch himself with a rerun of The Simpsons. Dick Cavett could not make it. It was Whiff and Poof night at the Yale Club. And Professor Dershowitz couldn't make it. It was a reunion for O.J. Simpson. And Ron Chernow, the famous Pulitzer Prize winning historian, could not make it. They finally got him tickets to see Hamilton. So those are the people who are not the moderators.
We can do better.
We've been asked to talk about our relationship on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, right? And
I despised him.
well, there was nothing to despise.
Oh, go on.
Okay.
You were the,
But did we
the
have
hated
a
producer. What do you want?
did we have a relationship on the Mary Tyler Moore Show?
No, I stayed away from you. You stayed away from me.
So this is going to be a hard 30 minutes to fill, as you can see, because this is not exactly Abbott and Costello with the routine here.
Our writing sessions were even more ludicrous.
So we actually had no contact on the Mary.
And I've liked it that way.
Okay, and so do we have any stories to tell about our day on the...
Well, when he first came on, he came fresh from the Johnny Carson show. And he...
Actually, it was Dean Martin's show.
Huh?
It was Dean Martin.
Oh, okay. Anyway, he had been with Johnny, and he heard that I was going to appear on.
No, don't tell that story. That's
Why
a
not?
terrible story. No, because you're going to attack me with that story.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
No, you can't tell. No, I'm not going to let you tell. I'm not.
I'm going to tell it.
No, I would.
You can't stop me. Well, what do you want to talk
go
about?
tell. Well,
You
I
want
had.
to talk about how you wrote the script for Birthday Party?
Yes, can I do that?
Yeah.
All right. Do you? We may be able to kill 40 minutes. How many of you remember the Mary Tyler Moore episode where Mary throws a surprise birthday party for Lou Grant? Okay. Okay. Well, that's based on a true story, and it's my true story. During the, I forget what year it was, but it was my birthday. We were shooting the show, and I had an evening planned with my girlfriend. I was going to make steaks, and I was going to watch a fight, and I was walking around my apartment in my underwear, as I like to do, and the doorbell rang, and I opened it. There were 20 people in the hall. They all yelled, "Surprise!" And I slammed the door in their face. And I turned with some, I guess, with some attempted anger at my girlfriend, and she said, "My psychiatrist told me not to do this." And in any case, eventually, after an hour or so, we let some people in. Many people had drifted away, whatever friends there were. Gifts were propped up along the side of the hall. And it was, of course, the worst birthday party anybody's ever been to. They were pissed off. I was pissed off. And the next day, when we talked about this with Jim Brooks, he said, we should do this story for Lou Grant. Mary throws a surprise birthday party, and it's for Lou Grant. And so the script was written. A couple weeks later, I didn't write it, but somebody did. A couple weeks later, we were shooting the show, and I got a call. I guess I was the producer on duty. And I came down. Mary had a question. Mary never had a question about the scripts, did she?
No.
No, she did.
That's what I heard.
No. And the cast never had questions about the script. And Mary said, I don't know how to tell you this, but who would do a thing like this? Just me and Mary on the set. And she said, we're making Lou Grant terribly neurotic, aren't we? And I said, well, maybe we can think of a speech later, the end of the show, that will save him. And that was, anyway, the surprise birthday party. How did you feel about doing that script?
I like, each one, Mary would bring the guest in and say, now Joe is here. Now you like Joe, don't you? He can come in, can he?
Well, Rhoda, she did it with Rhoda.
Yeah. Yeah. And they would have to pass my inspection and my approval before they could come in. It chimed very much with when Rhoda decorated my apartment. And I came in and I said, I love it. And as soon as she got out of the room, I said, I hate it. So it was that kind of a script.
But did you feel it made you neurotic?
Well, I am.
Okay. Anyway, that was the surprise birthday party.
And you can bet your boots that Lou was neurotic, too, in his own way.
Do you remember the speech we put in? Or
no, I don't remember that.
Okay, all right.
It's not my moment.
But we didn't interact, except on the stage, maybe.
Right.
Well,
I never liked you.
But that doesn't bother me. But, but what did you do after the show?
Probably celebrated.
No, but did you go to a bar? Did you?
No, we always went to a restaurant. Had
the cast.
Yeah, no. Gavin and Ted and our wives.
Okay.
We'd go to and have a nice big meal, and at that time I think I was drinking scotch, and I had a lot of scotch.
You got drunk, in other words. You said.
No, I don't get drunk.
Okay.
Only if I'm driving.
But anyway, the cast and the writers and the producers were on separate tracks when the show was being done. Any other stories you would like to share about the Mary Tyler Moore Show?
Well, not really, because it was such an even-keeled show. There was only one time Mary's sugar went out of balance, and she got hysterical. Were you there then?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
On the set?
Well, it was off. She got offset,
Yeah.
and they were doctoring her as best they could. And I guess it was a short day, but and this was such a phenomenal woman. It's an unbelievable woman. Yeah. We'd have a lunch hour, and we had bankers hours on the show. Started at 9:30, 10 o'clock, worked till 12 or 12:30. Then we'd break for lunch, and she would, Gavin and Ted and I would go have a nice big lunch. She would have dance class during her lunch hour. And all the girls joined with her, you know, Rhoda, Phyllis, they all had to dance with Mary. Gavin even tried it for a short while. And then I think we kind of jousted him into dropping it and going back to having lunches with us. But when they finally got rid of the ladies on the show, because we were, you know, we were pissed off. We wanted more attention, and the girls were getting it all.
You mean in terms of material?
Yeah, Phyllis, Rhoda, Mary, that goddamn Mary. Yeah, never liked her.
So when you got a script on Monday and looked at it, you were very careful to know how big your part was. Right? That was the first thing you looked at.
And when you got Rhoda and Phyllis and Mary into a scene, I mean, they would take hours to work it out, and particularly Phyllis. She was a problem child. She was really a problem child.
But she asked questions.
And we might have had even equal lines, but we took no time at all. We just sailed through whatever rehearsal we had. But the girls were always problematical, as women are.
Mr. Asner comes from another era, as we all know. And
if it works, it's true.
okay. And you also notice I call him Mr. Asner like Mary called him Mr. Grant. I think it's
I know he looks older than I am, but he's not.
I have one other story, I guess, about Mary that I never told, and I thought of it today, given the White House and the situation. We did a show where Betty Ford was a guest, and it was a phone conversation with Mary and Betty Ford, the First Lady at the time. And we had to go to Washington to shoot Betty Ford's segment. And since I think I wrote that episode, but if I didn't, I do know that I made the contact. I knew there was a comedy writer working for President Gerald Ford, if you can believe that, named Bob Orban, who I had worked with years before with Dick Gregory. So I called Bob Orban and said, would Betty Ford do the Mary Tyler Moore Show? And he worked it out. So Grant Tinker, Mary's husband, and Mary and myself flew to Washington. And of course, we were given a great reception. That's that bad chair over there. And we were entertained, and we were given a tour of the White House. And I remember being with Mary, and we opened the door, whoever was giving us a tour, a very important person at the White House, opened the door. It looked like a meeting of the Joint Chiefs of Staff over a map, planning an invasion, almost. It was very secret, a lot of brass and a lot of generals and admirals. And Mary said, "Oh, sorry." And they turned, they saw it was Mary Tyler Moore. And they said, "Oh my God, it's Mary Tyler Moore." They all left the table, the maps, the little miniature ships that they had out in sea, and they surrounded Mary and asked for her autograph. She was, of course, the star. It gave you a very interesting insight into Washington then.
She could have sunk 1,000 ships.
So I think that's my only other story about.
7 years of bliss.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I thought all television was like that. Stupidly, I thought, well, this is an easy kind of way to make a living, and I realized that when I went out into the world after Mary Tyler Moore, that there weren't talents like Mary, and there weren't bosses like Grant Tinker, and who ran interference with the network. We almost never had any problem with.
Did you stay with the show till the end?
Yes, I was there. You don't remember that? Why would I leave?
I kept hoping.
Well, anything else on the Mary Tyler? Okay, so we have questions later, so if there are questions about Mary Tyler Moore. I guess we can talk about the, don't be frightened by these binders. We're not going to do these. First of all, they're in big print for both of us. So.
Lots of blank pages, too.
But we would like to talk about the book, our book, and called The Grouchy Historian. We wanted to call it The Pissed Off Historian, but Simon and Schuster thought differently of it. And the question that has been asked of Ed mainly is why he wrote this book. So if you don't mind, we have chapter 1 is
why I wrote this book.
Why I wrote this book. So if you want to tell us why you wrote this book.
Yeah, I'll be glad to.
Thank you.
Well, there's this.
Mr. Ed, well, I'll do an introduction.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Ed Asner reading chapter 1, introduction, why I wrote this book.
Oh, ye that love mankind.
I thought we'd skip that part.
Okay. Ye, you don't like ye?
Well, I don't know. It sets it off. It's a quote from Thomas. It's okay if you're reading it. I think if you read it, it's okay.
Oh, ye that love mankind, ye that dare oppose not only the tyranny but the tyrant, stand forth. Thomas Paine, Common Sense, 1776. Thomas Paine, who is all too little honored in our schooling and education.
Especially by the right wing, by the way. Mm-hmm. That side of politics, really, since we're stopped on Thomas Paine, they don't want to acknowledge that here is a great patriot who wrote a great tract called Common Sense that may have saved the Revolutionary War. And because he was a supposed atheist and because he was because he stood up for freedoms and liberties, he's totally ignored when you get into right-wing literature about the Constitution. Anyway, so with that interruption, I'm sorry, we go back to why I wrote this book.
Nobody thumps the Constitution like a right-wing Republican. Conservatives love the Constitution, invoking its very name, even more than the Bible and Ronald Reagan, as all the proof they need that God is on their side. It's not enough that they think they own the Constitution. They act as if they wrote the damn thing. The Constitution is the cornerstone of the Republican Party's agenda, along with small government, less regulation, and making sure the rich pay less taxes than the rest of us. Republicans are supported by a phalanx of right-wing radio and TV hosts who wave the Constitution at us like so many brainwashed Chinese once lofted copies of Chairman Mao's Little Red Book. Mark Levin, I love that pronunciation, Levin. Most of us think of it as Levin, but he's Levin. Yeah. Levin A. Rose, yes. Mark Levin and Glenn Beck have made, it rhymes with schmeck, have made small fortunes publishing books that rewrite the Constitution to suit themselves. Rush Limbaugh's website once featured him beside a blow-up of the Constitution's preamble, a wide smile across his wide face, as if he had just scored a prescription for painkillers. Bill O'Reilly used to give away free copies of the Constitution with every purchase of his Patriot coffee mug. That was, of course, before he was fired from his television show where he advocated family values on the one hand while calling female employees and masturbating with the other. From Tea Party politicians to the Wall Street editorial board, all share the same distorted view. Progressives, with the aid of pinko academics and activist judges, have been on a century-long march to disfigure the Constitution, bend it to their own evil objectives, and undo the social order as ordained by our country's founding fathers. To give you some idea, or should I say founding mothers? Maybe that would be
Well,
better.
there weren't any,
No.
unfortunately.
I'd like to think of them that way, though.
All right.
To give you some idea of what I'm talking about, here are samples of quotes from their best and brightest. I, as a constitutional conservative, as a believer in Jesus Christ, readily embrace Donald Trump's agenda. Michelle Bachmann, former Republican congressperson. If standing for liberty and standing for the Constitution makes you a wacko bird, then you can count me a very proud wacko bird, Senator Ted Cruz. You can go to our founding fathers' early documents and see how they crafted a Declaration of Independence and a Constitution that allows that Judeo-Christian belief to be the foundation of our lives. Sarah Palin, who is not who she once was. It is my number one duty as a human being to earn an experiment in self-government every day by spotlighting cockroaches who violate their oath to the U.S. Constitution and wipe their ass with the U.S. Constitution. Ted Nugent, celebrity Trump supporter. And there are a hell of a lot more where that came from. Pissed off by the lies, misrepresentations, and outright horseshit, I decided it was time to strike back. Who should I strike back with? It was time to reclaim the Constitution. Besides, if the righties were wrong about everything else, like health care, climate change, and the corporate tax rate, they had to be wrong about the Constitution. First, I did my homework. I read the Constitution and the amendments, perused the Federalist and Madison's notes taken during the Constitutional Convention, surveyed the lives of the founders and framers, looked over the Supreme Court opinions of Antonin Scalia, and Clarence Thomas, the Gold Dust twins, and even tried to digest Glenn Beck's book, The Original Argument, Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments, and Dr. Ben Carson, A More Perfect Union. 3 of the best over-the-counter sleep aids on the market. To find out how the mind of a strict constructionist works, I also dipped into Ted Cruz's autobiography. Yes, sir. How long did it take me to read? Time for Truth, a faith-based romance novel in which the hero falls in love with himself at an early age. I love the way he does his hair, by the way. Here's a preview of what I came up with. The framers wrote the Constitution in order to form a strong central government, giving sweeping powers to Congress, not the states, and balanced by an equally strong executive branch. Nothing in the Constitution suggests, let alone enforces, the concepts of limited government, limited taxes, and limited regulations. The framers were not divinely inspired. They were lawyers. Do you really know any divinely inspired lawyers? I ask you, do you really know any? The only lawyer ever to be divinely inspired was Saul of Tarsus. When the framers wrote, "We the people," they meant themselves. Most of the founders and framers were deists. Deism is a religion that believes in a God who really doesn't give a shit. The framers did not hate taxation. They needed taxes desperately. They had a war to pay off, and I might add at this point, a country to run. A strict constructionist is someone who selects portions of the Constitution to justify already held beliefs. Under the Constitution, women had the same rights as a Chickasaw Indian. The Constitution is as good as the people who swear to protect it. The rest of what I learned is you have to buy the book. I know what you're thinking. I know it. I know you like the back of my hand. I know what you're thinking. Why me of all people? Why am I writing a book about the Constitution? Well, why not me? After all, I've played some of the smartest people ever seen on television.
Okay. Thank you.
There you have it.
Okay. All right, so that's the first chapter. And since that went over so well, we're going to do a little back and forth here. Chapter 4. Do you have chapter 4? Oh, come on.
I got it.
You got it.
Chief.
Okay. All right. So this is called Heckling the Right Wing, their top 10 talking points, and my top 10 comebacks. So I'm going to read the right wing, and he's going to, I don't think you need to say this.
No, I don't.
Okay. And then you'll give the comeback, okay?
Yeah.
Top 10 talking points of the right wing. 1, the framers were all devout Christians.
You think everyone was a devout Christian. You probably think Jesus was a devout Christian.
The framers were opposed to taxation.
The first day in office, Washington as president and Hamilton as the Secretary of the Treasury taxed carriages and whiskey. Then opened a bank to put the money in.
Well, maybe not the first day, but 3, the greatest influence on the Constitution was the Bible.
Then why doesn't the preamble read, "We the chosen people"?
to understand the Constitution, you have to read the Federalist Papers.
Nobody can read the Federalist Papers. What are you talking about? Madison and Hamilton wrote the damn things, and they couldn't read the Federalist Papers.
5, the Constitution gives everyone the right to own a gun.
The framers didn't want everyone to have a vote, let alone a gun. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
The Constitution does not grant homosexuals the right to marry.
The Constitution also does not grant the right of homosexuals to win all the Tonys. So what? Hello?
I'm timing my laugh here, or your laugh, sorry. The framers were a diverse group.
A diverse group, huh?
Yes.
The framers were as diverse a group as the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
We finally got that out. I'm sorry. Okay. Let's skip to page. James Madison is the author of the Constitution.
The Constitution is the greatest cut and paste job since the New Testament.
The framers believed in term limits.
I'm with you on that. I figure if a congressman can't steal enough money in 3 terms, he's too dumb to hold the job in the first place.
And finally, number 10, the only way to interpret the Constitution is to determine what the framers were thinking when they wrote it.
You can't even figure out how the framers took a piss in pants without a fly. How do you expect to figure out what they were thinking? I had teenagers. I never knew what they were thinking. And we lived in the same house. Hell, I don't even know what I'm thinking half the time.
Okay. Okay, so that's, I think those two. By the way, I want you to know the depth of research that we did for this book. It went beyond this. And maybe we'll come back to this because it has an introduction by Ted Cruz in here, strangely enough. If you can believe, when he wasn't a senator, when he was an attorney, and maybe if you'd like, Mr. Asner will read an open letter to Ted Cruz.
I wonder which part of Ted Cruz is the dumbest, the Spanish part or the Indian part?
I hope you're not asking me.
I got you stumped there, right?
Yeah. Do you want to do the, well, here, let me do this. We talked about the Second Amendment. All right, so, and that couldn't be more timely at this point.
After Nevada.
And of course, immediately after a slaughter like that, gun stocks go up, and business is very good for the people who support the NRA and are the NRA. And so we have a chapter here on the Second Amendment, and we have absolutely concluded that this country was actually founded on gun control. You want to talk
I would say that
talk about Shays?
there in 1786, I believe it is.
Shortly before the writing of the Constitution.
There was an uproar by a number of ex-soldiers who fought in the Revolution.
4,000.
And they banded together into a group headed by, I think he had been a lieutenant colonel or something, named Shea.
Daniel Shea.
And they were grouped together, 4,000 of them, and they were marching towards the armory in Springfield, Massachusetts. and they were going to take all the guns that are in the armory and launch a means, an attempt to either overthrow the government or force them to pay them their back pay, their back money, their back interest, whatever. Because this country was terrible. As run under the Articles of Confederation, was in a rotten shape, going penniless and paying off foreign debt as well. So they began their march, and Washington and I think Hamilton mounted up a group of gentlemen and stood them off. I don't think there was anything, there might have been a death or two, I'm not sure. But broke up Shays' rebellion. But it so scared the hell out of those people, the Constitutional Convention, meeting in 1786 and 1787, that they began to concern themselves about creating such an amendment to prohibit the rise of armed groups.
Well, it was, okay. So the sequence was, as Mr. Asner said, scared the hell out of the founders or the framers. And then so immediately they had to revise the Articles of Confederation. Now, I'm going to need, can you bring out those? This is going to be a little bit of a demonstration. Can you bring it? All right, so here we have, can you, Walt, can you hold the first slide? Okay. All right, so can everybody read? This is the Second Amendment as it stands now. Can you hold it up, Walt? Okay. We had something, but we lost it. Okay, so we have Walt instead. All right, so this is the Second Amendment as it was written. If you step back, then I could read it at the same time. Okay. All right, so this well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's a little ambiguous legally, I guess, but this is not the first version of the Second Amendment, okay? So the real version of the Second, this is how, if we want to know the origin of the Second Amendment, this is the origin of it. So this is the way James Madison first wrote it. James Madison wrote the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment. There were actually 20. They were condensed to 10 when it got through Congress. But this is what Madison first wrote while he was in Congress. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, comma, so it's part of the same clause, a well-armed and well-regulated militia, clearly a militia, clearly an organization of the state, being the best security of a free country, comma. Now, he added this, number 3, but no person religiously scrupulous of bearing arms shall be compelled to render military service in person. Okay. So this is clearly, no, well, I'm going to need you. So what we have here is it clearly, if we're talking about intent, original intent, Madison's intent is that this is a militia, a state militia, or else why have this clause about conscientious objection? Now, when this got to the Senate for a vote or through committee, they lopped off this part. This part came off. They thought it was too cumbersome, too hard to enforce, and they argued that people could use this to get out of the military. So it never made it to the final draft. But if you're an originalist, or if you're Scalia, if you're Thomas, or if you're Justice Roberts, you know what Madison meant when he wrote the Second Amendment, because there it is. Okay, so that's one argument, that it is clearly no right in the Second Amendment for an individual to own a gun. It's not there, never has been. It's only when it got to Scalia in Heller versus Washington. Okay, can we go back to number one? Am I making sense or? Yeah. Okay. Have you heard this before? No. A few people. Okay. So we're back to, this is what Scalia ruled on. The one that's in the Constitution now. Here's what Scalia did. How many, I feel like a teacher, but forgive me. How many people know how Scalia worked this out, figured this out? What he did was a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. He called this the prefatory clause. There's no legal term. It's not a grammatical term that I know of. He invented the prefatory clause, and like a kosher butcher cutting off a chicken, he took this part and threw it away and said, the Second Amendment, this is the operative clause. The only clause that matters is this: the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, which just coincidentally happens to be the motto of the NRA. And if you go into the lobby of the NRA, this is in their marble on the walls. So that's what Scalia did to the Second Amendment, and that's what we're living under right now. Now, if he had done the same thing to the preamble, we would have lost we the people. And if Homer had done that to the Iliad, you'd have no Iliad. So, all right, thank you. Well, forgive me for showing on. So there's the Second Amendment as we figured it out, or as the founders
which was also based on Virginia's Bill of Rights, which Madison helped write.
Well, Madison's first act of legislation was to pass a law in Virginia that said you could not walk around with a loaded gun unless it was on your own property. So the idea that the framers, the founders, believed in individual gun rights is a myth, a lie, and it's been perpetrated by the right wing and unanswered, as far as I know. So, do you want to do the letter to Ted Cruz?
The what?
The letter to Ted Cruz.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's something to share with our public.
Okay.
Let's see now.
Here, I have it here.
Oh, you have it there?
Yeah.
He's got it there.
You can lose it. Okay,
I'm going
so
to read it, but he's got
when we found this, this was one of our first books in terms of research. We found the introduction by Ted Cruz, and Mr. Asner has an open letter written in the style of 1787.
Let's hope so.
Okay.
Open letter to Senator Ted Cruz, written in the style of 1787. This is a quote from Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. If you shot Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate and the trial was in the Senate, nobody would convict you. I don't know if it's going to happen, but let's wait and see. And this is our reply to the Right Honorable U.S. Senator from the state of Texas, Theodore Cruz. I am prompted to write this upon discovery of a foreword you penned to U.S. Constitution for Dummies. In it, you make assertions about our American Constitution that I, as one of the country's citizens, feel compelled to respond to. Before I proceed, however, with the main body of my argument, I would like to observe that none of my comments are meant to be taken in any way as personal. Unlike our current president, I am not given to reckless, unfounded assaults on a man's good name. I refer, of course, to the calumny perpetrated by the aforesaid president when he repeated as gospel the conspiracy theories promulgated in the worthless pages of that so-called magazine known as the National Enquirer, in which your father was named in connection with Lee Harvey Oswald's assassination of John F. Kennedy. I should mention that I myself am not a reader of that scandal sheet, finding in it small lies heaped upon greater ones, though I will confess that when idling at my local supermarket, I have been drawn to its pages, especially when they feature compelling essays like Who's Gay and Who's Not, as well as various close-up photographs featuring the cellulite of assorted well-known personages. That you were able to deflect the scurrilous attacks made on your father and later your wife with such equanimity, and then to endorse the man who repeated them only attests to the forgiving, faith-based charity of your good nature. Others might judge you harshly for choosing sycophantism over loyalty to your own family, but not I. I leave that a matter to be decided eventually between you and your maker. All I know is that a lesser man, such as myself, would have certainly harbored a lifetime of grudges and recrimination. But I digress. As I stated earlier, this missive is only meant to respond as best I can to the 5 assertions you made in your foreword regarding our nation's Constitution. I now proceed to demolish
This is you talking now.
these assertions, and I will do so thusly, as soon as I turn this page.
Now, you're going to skip that, and you're going to go to...
Yes, I'm going to.
I just did this here.
Just going to skip that page.
Going to skip
and
all those
skip
pages.
the next page.
And you're going to sum up.
And I'm going to sum up, yes.
This is where he...
I do that, yes.
Each
page.
assertion from Ted Cruz is answered,
Ah,
and then
yes.
you get to your conclusion.
Oh, we're going to get there. We're climaxing, I swear to God. We are climaxing. In a few moments, we'll really be
Okay.
Another blank page there. And let's see, there's another one there. Oh, very good editing, very good. Very good editing, yeah. Oh, let's see now. Now that's gone. Yeah. Thank God I didn't have to read all that to you. You'd be so bored. Yes, that's gone too, yeah. Very good. Thank you for letting me read this letter. Wait a minute now.
All right, one more.
Are you
I
sure?
hope. No.
No, you hope. You hope. No. There we go. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. In summary, sir, I find your assertions about the Constitution to be nothing more than an assorted pack of half-truths, misstated facts, and downright lies. Dissembling and disinformation employed by you in the service of your own misguided principles of justice. I have read where your former Harvard law professor, you'll like this one, Alan J. Dershowitz, once proclaimed you a brilliant, loyal, legal mind. Brilliant legal mind. Have you then lost all sense of reason? Has your once brilliant mind been overthrown by political expediency, so poisoned by ambition that truth-telling has become an obsolete and neglected vocation beyond your lexicon? For you, sir, have become in no uncertain way monarch of mendacity, devotee of deception, prince of pretense. If one of the great dangers to our democracy is the pestilence of sophistry, the new now border on treachery, if not treason. To put it blunt but fair, you, sir, are a dangerous man and one not to be trusted with the reins of government. Oh, just a little afterthought here. Bear in mind that Ted Cruz was probably next in line if Donald Trump had not been chosen. I recognize the severity of my words, writing as I do so in so public a forum. But I hereby stand behind each and every one of them. I also recognize that you, as a man of honor, may choose, as is your right, to demand satisfaction from me for their instance. Oh, you didn't tell me about this. In which case I will be most assuredly willing to oblige, should that be your course of action. As you well know, there are still states in the Union that permit men such as ourselves to go into the woods with dueling pistols and try to kill one another. I await your response. Your seconds can contact my seconds at William Morris Endeavor at their Beverly Hills office. Whilst this vital flame exists within me, I remain your most staunch adversary, Edward Asner.
Good. Okay. Okay. Can we have questions now? Oh, very good. Okay. All right. I'm going to just take a chance and read them. All right.
You give me a chance to read them, too.
No, I'm the moderator. Remember?
Yeah.
Mr. Asner, what do you think of the political climate now?
It sucks.
Okay, there's your answer.
But how it can be changed, I'll have
All right, we're back to Mary Tyler Moore here.
grave worries.
Talk about putting the together. Now that's.
You want me to try?
No, I'm reading it.
I wouldn't
It's
say.
hard writing in the dark. I would imagine. How long did it take to put one episode together?
Well, they prepared earlier as the before.
You don't know. You have no idea.
What?
You have absolutely no idea. I'm taking a real chance here. You can see his expression. You don't know how long it took an episode.
I know.
Oh, you're talking about the production of an episode. Oh, you talk about putting an episode together.
What?
The episode, how long did it take to put together, from your point of view?
Well, I know that they were preparing, sketching out certain episodes as to what to do, the main theme, so to speak, in the weeks ahead of that particular episode being rendered into final script. And then before, say the week before, the weekend before, they would assemble and write a finished script, which we would then read together on Mondays.
Okay, does that answer your question, or would you like to hear it from a writer's point of view?
Why don't we hear it from a writer's point of view?
No, there's nothing I can add to what he said. Is Lou Grant more like Ed Asner, or is Ed Asner more like Lou Grant?
Difficult. I've only been caused to look at this very closely with a fine lens in this last year, I would say. And I think that I've created Lou Grant, or they helped me create Lou Grant, and I lean in and take what's good about Lou Grant and slap it onto me. I think it's very hard to split the baby. There's too much of us. He's a much more honest man than I. He's a regular Joe. I'm not. I'm sure you've discovered that. I have my twists and turns that Lou Grant never even considered. But in the main, exteriorly, I think I'm a lot like him, and I've borrowed on that exterior quite a bit.
What about the politics? About
What?
Lou Grant's politics? What did he have?
Lou Grant was more of a centrist than I am. I think the older I get, the more socialistic I become. And I don't think Lou Grant would ever be a socialist. He would be a leftist Democrat, perhaps, but in the main, he would be a centrist.
He would believe in medical care for everybody, I would think.
Yeah. Well,
Okay. All right.
if that's
Well, that's a socialist
possible.
idea, as it turns out right now.
well, I know
it
what
seems to be labeled
see,
a
that's
socialist
the
idea.
difference about this country. The ideas may sell, but if they're given the title of socialistic ideas, then they'll get voted down. So as long as you can float the idea without calling it socialistic, it's going to be okay.
All right. Here's a question. Can you talk about the chemistry you had with the actors on the Mary Tyler Moore Show? I'll give you the actors, and you talk about the chemistry. All right? We know about you and Cloris, right? How about you
Well,
and
what
Betty?
do you know about me, Cora?
Well, all right. You talked about you and Mary. What about you and Ted Knight?
He's the funniest man I ever knew. There was a time there when Gavin and I were wandering around, and Ted was in the scene. He came up under the bleachers, and he said, now I'm going to try this scene with a different approach. So tell me which one you like the best. He did the scene with a different approach. It was just as funny, just as delightful. And then he came back again. He said, now I'm going to try it a third way. I said, okay. He tried it a third way. It was almost as funny as 1 and 2, but not as fully. So then when it finally came time to decide which way to shoot it, he went to mostly 1 with brushes applied from 2 and 3. But here was Gavin and me who struggled to make the first one acceptable. And here he was doing 2 and 3, and he probably could have done 10. So I wanted to kick his ass. But he had done some boxing, so I chose not to. He was a funny man. The funniest incident that occurred with him was about the 2nd or 3rd year. I don't know when it was. He came to Alan Burns' office.
I was there.
You were there?
I was there. Want me to tell the story? Since I was there?
Yeah, I don't know if you were there, but
I was there.
I think it's funnier without you.
All right, I'll tell the story because I was sitting in the chair when he came in, and he was a great guy and one of my favorite characters to write for. And I was in Alan Burns' office, who was co-creator of Mary Tyler Moore along with Jim Brooks, and I don't know, we were talking about a story or something. Ted came in distraught, absolutely distraught, and he slumped into the chair and he said, we said, what's wrong? And he said, this was about this, I think we were in our 7th year. He said, for the last 7 years, I've been playing an idiot. That's all I am. I'm just an idiot. And I'm an idiot. And he just said it, and he was near tears. And Alan tried to console him, and then I went to my schooling, and I said, Ted, the character of Ted Baxter is in a great long line of comic performers, going back to Aristophanes. There was the buffoon, and then in comedy dell'arte, and I'm pulling all of this out of a hat, really. And I'm saying, so you're in a great comic tradition, and great actors have played these characters. And I don't know if I thought of somebody from Shakespeare, but I invented it. And he began to brighten as I was doing this more and more. And then Jim Brooks came in and said, "What's going on?" And Al and I explained that he was concerned about his character. And Jim said, "Well, he's a schmuck. What's that?" He plays a schmuck. What's the big deal? And Jim walked out, and Alan and I looked at each other, and then Ted slumped back down again. So that's the story that I was there for, by the way.
I'd do a better job, but...
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay. What was it like to work with Larry David on Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Well, Larry David was a delight to work with. I don't remember working with him, but he was there approving or disapproving. The thing about Larry David, I did one of the shows in the first season. He finally nailed me. He had been working at nailing me even when he was doing Seinfeld, and I couldn't put it all together. So I did the show, and it came off very well, and of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And in it, I, of course, had a heart attack and died. So a couple of years go by, and he's busy reaping success after success with the show. And finally, I said, "Well, you know, it's enough time now." I go to him, I said, "Why don't you have me back?" And he said, as he was wont to do, "You died." I guess he didn't watch TV, so he didn't really know that you could come back after you died. I don't know.
All right, I don't know where this is going to lead, but I'll put it
I'll
out.
try to help you.
All right. And it says for both here, but is the Democratic Party liberal enough in your view?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Who was it? There's a bill that has 53 sponsors on silencers for guns. And there are Democrats in the 53 sponsors. So I think there you have an idea of
This is a bill to legalize silencers. So the argument is so that children shooting guns will not have their ears disturbed. That's, by the way, Donald Trump Jr.'s argument, who can be seen in an ad for silencers on behalf of the NRA. So this, if you're not up on that, you should be. And if you're not outraged, you should be. It's really part of this insanity, and it's really the reason I wanted to talk about the Second Amendment and go through that thing with the cue cards as much as I did, because I think it's very important and a very serious issue. And that's, I guess, one aspect of the Democratic Party. My answer is no as well, without giving any reasons. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, it never. I mean, they backtracked ever since Roosevelt. It's like they're running from Roosevelt because they don't want to be thought of in that same vein. Roosevelt, who saved the country.
Well, we're getting into a serious note here, so
That's the way it goes, pal.
I'm looking for something to brighten the mood here. Okay, on the last Mary Tyler Moore show, when you said, "I cherish you people,"
Yeah.
was that an ad lib?
No.
Let me say that, there weren't ad libs on that show. If there were things that came up during rehearsal that anybody said and they were worth keeping, they would be written in the script. But when we got to show night and we're doing the show, nobody would go off script or ad lib anything, only because it would be a disservice to the fellow actor and would throw off cues and things like that. And the show had been carefully not only scripted, but scripted for cameras. So nobody, when cameras were running in front of an audience, would even think of that. Though that has occurred on other shows, I'm sure, but it didn't on that because it wasn't the way we worked, and it wasn't the way anybody expected to work.
There was in that last show, we were all clumped together, sobbing on each other's shoulders, and Jim Brooks came up and he said, "Now, is there a way we can, without breaking up the clutching group, is there a way we can, I guess, get to another funny line or end the scene or whatever?" And fortunately, what's her name? Ted's wife.
Georgia Angle?
Georgia. Georgette said, "Well, there's Kleenex on the desk, Gavin's desk. We could go for the Kleenex." And yes, that suggestion went over like a dynamite keg. And we all edged over in a clump to get Kleenex and pass it around to each other to blow our noses and wipe our tears. And it put a capper on the scene.
And that came out of rehearsal, and then we worked it on the...
But that was an atypical time when a cast member came up with a partial solution.
What's interesting about that final hug on Mary, to me, is that I don't think before that we ended shows or scenes with people hugging. Now, from the little I know, there isn't a television show that doesn't have a hug at every moment of the show. We waited 7 years to do that hug. Now they do it in the first 5 minutes of every show, it seems. So the hug, I think, has become overdone to the point where I think it was a rule on Seinfeld that there be no hugs, having been fed up with all the hugs that followed. So
now, when it was phenomenal exercise for actors to do that show, and you could not cut an an anywhere along the way and not be questioned on it as to why it was done or why you did it, and eventually talk you out of doing it. So the script went completely as written. And it was wonderful training, even though all of us had been stage actors in our prior lives. What I then discovered, going on to other camera shows, other comedies, that the writing stunk compared to Mary Tyler Moore, and it was always welcome and a great help when you assisted in making additions and corrections that weren't in the script. So we came out of perfection into less so.
When you were before you were on Mary Tyler Moore, had you done a lot of comedy?
No, that was the only comedy.
That pilot, or not pilot, but that first episode of Mary was the first comedy you had done?
I had done comedy on stage, but never.
What comedy had you done on stage, if I may ask?
Three-penny opera.
Okay. Heavy comedy.
I did.
But that was your first, in terms of where you...
Midsummer Night's Dream as Shakespeare.
Yeah, but you had to get, here you have to get laughs in front of that audience.
Yeah.
really. And I guess this is are we out of time? Is it? All right, so I have a last thing, a last request, as it is, from the audience. And
I'm up to it.
are you? Okay. This is amazing. You know, I couldn't get up this morning for a radio interview, but he was up at 7, and he's been going like this and just as angry at me all the day since I joined him, since 7 a.m. 7 a.m. he started on doing book interviews.
Showbiz my life.
And TV, and I'm fading very fast, and he still has enough spunk, I would say. So why?
And that's the other thing. People come up to me and say, you know, my favorite line.
Well, yeah, okay, here. I hold that very question in mind.
Yeah.
It's almost telepathy here. You've got spunk. I hate spunk. Would you do it for us? They're asking. I don't
Well,
know.
no, I don't hate spunk. I love spunk.
We're going to have to settle for that.
It doesn't work, I guess.
No, it doesn't. Okay.
I hate having to perpetuate that lie.
Okay. I'm also now reminded to that there are books on sale and signing next door. Now, this isn't called for, but is there? I can't see anything out there. Is there any question that anybody would want to throw out from the audience that might
Or throw up.
or and I can't call on anybody, so somebody could just.
What's your favorite memory as a unionist?
As a unionist?
As a member of the union, well, why don't you explain your background? Well, they know a little.
Well, they know that I was president of the union. It's all in the past, and it was always marching for the was it the United Stewardesses? That was gratifying, and the pilots marched with them. Then when the TWA stews went on strike, the pilots didn't march with them. So it was finding out the intricacies of unionism and who stood up for whom. That was always very intriguing for me, and of course explains that unionism is at such a low ebb today, and yet you don't have a democracy if you don't have unionism.
And Mr. Asner, all right. I think, as moderator, I'm going to call it an evening, and thank you all for coming and being such a wonderful audience. Thank you very much. Thank you.